Welcome to episode 76 of the Liz McMullen Show. My guest this evening is Barbara Winkus. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, what I found very interesting, because we have two books that we're going to be discussing during the interview, is that they were so different genres, different pace, and I would almost expect for, an author to either have like traditional romances with like slight deviations or murder mystery thriller suspense type of book. And so I thought it was really interesting and unusual that like you were able to have two completely different voices and different pacing. So how did you get into that? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. So I've always been a fan of mysteries and thrillers, and also romance a little bit, but the thing that was always missing for me in the traditional mysteries that I read was the lesbian couple. So I was always looking for something that had both of it in it, and so that was really for me a big revelation when I first, as a reader, found the lesbian mystery genre. As a writer, of course, I was going into that direction also with the mysteries, but I also write the characters that come to me, that I feel that appear out of nothing sometimes, and that's kind of what happened with Autumn Leaves, and that's. It started out as a standalone romance, but when I was done with that first book, the people who first read it and eventually also I got to that point where I said, there's maybe more to tell of the story of those characters. Mm-hmm. And I think when you look at it, you can also see there's a bit of suspense in there, and also in secrets there's a romance unfolding in there. Mm-hmm. So it's always a little bit of the two, I guess. That's.
Well, today actually I was sitting in on a lecture on setting, and one of the things that she did at the end was like challenge the students to mark up, I guess, one page, or however many parts of their manuscript, and show where things were pure description, and that would be red. Something with low movement or dialogue or something that's not very action-oriented would be yellow. And then things that involved action would be in green. And she said, no matter what genre that you're writing, you want there to be like movement and more green than yellow or red. And I thought that was very interesting because, some genres lead to like breathless activity. But what she said, which was very interesting, is if it's something that you can film, like if you were making a movie, then it's action. So, somebody, stalking out of a room, or somebody gripping a phone, something that expresses emotion in a way other than like traditional narrative.
I guess that's right. And also I think sometimes that in the lesbian fiction genre that we are a little bit more free to explore different types of stories, because like our genre is the roof of it is basically lesbian fiction, and underneath we go into every which direction that we want to go, like fantasy or mystery or romance, traditional or whatever, I think that sometimes a mainstream author is more put in the same genre all the time. You start out as a mystery writer, and then people put you in that category. Whereas when you have kind of that label as a lesbian author, then it's not clear what exactly that entails, and you have the chance to go different ways if you want to.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I think that ultimately there's a lot of flexibility in lesbian fiction, and some of it comes from the nature of it being same-sex relationships without all the conscriptions of like what a man's job is, or what a man's role is, or what's a masculine thing or what's a feminine thing. And I think by being outsiders, we've been able to kind of write our own script, and there's a lot more freedom and whatnot. But at the same time, you know, we do grow up in predominantly straight culture, and we see things on television and in movies and books. So we're not completely divorced from it, and gender-specific behavior or something that's like masculine or feminine is not necessarily something that's bad.
Of course.
But I mean, and so there is that variety, and we can easily make those choices rather than fighting the acceptance of feminist behavior, I guess. Like a lot of actresses have been asked, you know, are they a feminist? And even a recent actress who is a young woman, and she played like a really badass feminist kind of role. Like she was, you know, the action, and she was the hero. And yet when asked if she was a feminist, she's like, no, you know, because she thought it's either disparaging of men or playing the victim or whatever. And we're like, no.
It's sad. There's a lot of misunderstandings still, sadly, about that term, feminist. When you think about it, that's especially with when young women say something like that. It's like it always makes me cringe a little bit, because it's like, wow, history, you know. I mean, it's the facts are there, and the history is there, and it's so misunderstood still.
But there's also that, you know, that need to like explain it so you don't come across, like I say, if mainstream fiction is like, you know, a ball busting man hater, you know, and women who are in power often, like even like Hillary Clinton, for example, you know, she was asked like what designer she was wearing or something along those lines during an interview, and she paused for a second and she asked the journalist, is this a question that you would ask a male candidate? And they were just like, because they're talking about her appearance and, you know, talking about like, you know, often painting strong women or, you know, women leaders in that kind, oh, they must be a man hater, they must be this, that, and the other thing. And, you know, it's unfortunate. And I kind of like the freedom of writing lesbian fiction. And I was wondering, you do like mysteries and thrillers, and you have suspense in both books. Are there other genres that you're interested in going into or experiencing?
Yes. I have different books coming up with Eternal Press, my publisher, and of course I'm going to finish the series with Kelly and Rebecca. That's the last book coming out next year, but I also tried my hand at dystopian, because I think that is something where you can also make a statement, even a political statement, within a bit of a bit in disguise. But that genre also interests me, and then one of the next ones is also going to be an erotic romance. So I'm kind of blushing already saying that.
I want to dial back just, you know, to what the last genre that you were mentioning, and there may be readers who are unfamiliar with what that genre means. Can you explain what that genre means exactly?
The best example, I guess, that most people would be able to refer to or relate to would be, I guess, the Hunger Games, to describe a new society. And dystopian, it means kind of that things are going to the worse, and some forces are in power that are not necessarily good. It's like the opposite of utopia, like a better world. But in this one, it's like things are being worse in the dystopian, but there's always one person or a group of people who are realizing what is going on, and that the people in power are abusing it and are trying to change things. And of course, this is not going without a fight usually. Like Katniss in the Hunger Games, who realizes that the people in power are creating these games to enhance their own power, and that is not something that has to stay all the time. That's also a thing that people in power usually suggest, that it's better this way and it has to stay that way all the time. And so that's also what I meant when I said you could make a bit of a political statement in here, because that's often what we see in people who are in the present, like justifying patriarchy, for example. It's like people change all the time, but the ones who see that their power is kind of slipping away are more like, oh no, we can't have that, and so I guess dystopian, you create a story, you tell a story somewhere in the future, but you're really saying something about the present.
Yeah, I think also, I think it's important to look not only at our current political environment or the state of things, and to see where, if you, not necessarily in a slippery slope, but you do it in a way that really takes it to the nth degree, that if we continued going in this particular direction and our civil rights continue to capsize, this is where we could end up. And we don't want to end up there, and the reasons why we wouldn't want to. But one of the things that's been unfortunate in the last couple of years is politicians, at least in the United States, especially the conservatives, instead of dealing with issues like healthcare and jobs and infrastructure, they've made cultural issues the focus, and a lot of it is really stark attacks on women and health, especially when they're talking about birth control, yet there's no outcry about Viagra.
Right, and when you think another example for dystopian fiction in that context, Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, and when you think about it, it came out in the mid-80s. And when you go into that book now, it's very scary how close it is really to reality.
I know, it's absurd, and it's so funny that, if you had told me 10 years ago that they'd be trying to dial back the clock to the 50s or the 40s, I just wouldn't have thought it was plausible, and it just blows my mind. And the other thing that I find alarming is the stuff that politicians, or just like, people who are in the public eye, say in public in front of a camera, or, somehow recorded. That what they're saying privately is much worse.
Right. And yet there are no real consequences, or they are mostly not held accountable for that. Maybe in election time we are going to see that, but it's also sometimes when you see, for example, like the numbers that say how many people are now in favor of equal marriage, for example, then it's like 58% the last that I heard, and I'm wondering what's wrong with the 40-something others, what's it to them? So
and sometimes I feel like there are fundamental misunderstandings.
Yes, of course.
And there was this campaign on Facebook where apparently handwriting notes and putting them in front of yourself for photograph. I need feminism because. And then there was a backlash with all these young women. In stark contrast, it's like, I'm not into feminism because I'm not a victim.
I heard about that on something Women Against Feminism on Tumblr.
Yeah,
and I was like, what is wrong with you? Because like I said before, the facts are pretty much all out there. Like, for example, the Ms. magazine. Like when the first people really talked about that domestic violence existed, and all the programs that came after that, and protection of women against domestic violence, that is really, you can trace it directly back to feminist history, and of course the presence also. And do you understand what feminism is, what they did, what they are doing? And wow, that's something.
That actually parlays into your book, Autumn Leaves, in a way that you might not have expected. But I love when Callie's been given the what for by Betty LaRue, and she's like, I'm not going to let somebody with a stripper name tell me, that I'm an abomination. I was like, that is so awesome.
Thank you.
And then she got a really serious slap, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, that's also interesting. The different female characters in that book and in the series altogether, how they develop and how they learn. And it's Kelly, she's really stirring things up in that little town because people are also used to the way things are, being quiet and some things swept under the rug and not talked about. And so that person who comes out of nowhere and it's like different, like the townsfolk, and they have to deal with it somehow, and then things come to the surface, and it's like, wow, how are we going to deal with it? And the first reaction is, in the case of Betty, then pretty violent.
Yeah. Can you give just a brief summary of Autumn Leaves before we go a little further into discussing it?
Of course. So we started talking about Kelly, and she's a writer who has lived in New York, has some success, but she's had a bad relationship and she needed to get out. And so at the same time around, she inherited the house from her aunt. So she moves to that house because she also wants to finish her latest book in the series. And her idea is like to stay there like for a year or so, see what she's going to do with the house, stay under the radar, just have things being quiet and peaceful and nothing happening. But the problem is, when she moves into the house, her neighbor across the street is a married woman with 2 kids who greets all the new people in the neighborhood very friendly, and she's very involved in that community, like church, and she's kind of that person everybody knows and likes, and not making waves, but when she falls in love with Kelly, then of course there's going to be a lot of waves in the community, and it's not going to go over easy with a lot of people. And of course, for the two of them, it's very difficult in the beginning because for Rebecca, it's like she was never in her life attracted to another woman. That's all new, and it's of course scary because it's not just that she's married, but it's practically her whole life. She's not extreme in the religious sense, but she's a little, I'm not really so comfortable with people being open about it, and I don't know. And on the other hand, she has those feelings and is really unsure.
One of the things that I found interesting about Rebecca is that essentially, like, her conception of herself is that she's a good person, she's a good mom, she's, easier to get along with than maybe some of the other women in the community, and is less judgmental and less catty. But what she did not know about herself until she encountered Callie were her prejudices.
Yes, and that was also for me fascinating to explore a person who has a different background than, for example, me and many of my friends. And like for me, it was like I came out when I was in university, and I had a lot of accepting people around me, and it was like nothing bad or nothing that you would be scared of or scared of people's judgment. It was just okay. It was okay. This is it now, and I'm feeling a lot more like myself, and it's great. I know more of who I am, but for a lot of people, obviously, it's different. And I wanted a character that is not in a situation where like everything breaks down, but somebody who is like, whoa. This is not what I thought I am, and I have to adjust to this new situation, and also, like I said, face some of the prejudice I had and some of the preconceived notions.
Well, the other thing that I thought was interesting is when we're first introduced to her husband, David, we think, oh, he's an absentee husband. And of course, I'm thinking, is he cheating on the side? But he seemed really nice and caring, and they liked their time together. And then it's like he doesn't know, you don't know that he's going to be somebody with prejudices until she's talking about doing a project, which I feel does not affect him in any way since he's never home. And like the kids are in school, she has time to do it, yet he was irked that she took on another project and that she doesn't need to.
And that's also the thing, that everybody kind of has this image of Rebecca, and she also has it herself, and he has it, and the kids, and everybody. As long as she's in it, and as long as she kind of complies to it, it's fine for everybody. But the moment she goes out of this a little bit, that's like a little, I don't know. People react with difficulty to that thing.
Exactly. And one of the things that came up in the book is, and that I'm quite familiar with, is how there in the patriarchy there are men who continue to kind of show the women what their place is. But the big policing of behavior and like gender norming and everything that you're supposed to do, what it means to be a woman and what's acceptable way to spend your time, women police women more harshly and more seriously than men do.
In many ways, yes.
Because Betty was very much like that, there was that moment where she's like going in for the kill, just in a little brunch environment where she's kind of gearing up to do something truly offensive. And that doesn't really come into fruition, and then you really see it when she's got nobody watching each other, and what's interesting is a comment where she said, there was a time when people like you would not, be so uppity, pretty much.
Yeah. Yes, and it's also she is also an interesting character. She makes an interesting development over the series, because my theory about a lot of anti-gay sentiment is that people are very unhappy with themselves, and she gets to, in her own way, to explore those prejudices. Also, it's different in the way Rebecca does it, because she starts out on a different level. But in Betty, over time, she also gets to take a look at what she's been saying to people and the way she's been saying it. And that's something that we also going to see over time with her.
I think that's something important for aspiring authors, or even people who are published, but I think we can always grow as writers, is that it's very important for characters to grow. Yes. In some way, and it doesn't have to be big sweeping changes to their lives, but remaining static is even though that can happen in real life, like people can get stuck in ruts and it's not going to work itself out in like 200 pages. But in the realm of fiction, you want to see them grow, or, see something change in reaction to this kind of earth-shattering experience where their very orderly life is shaken up by somebody who's not even trying to be political or out there or shake people up. Yes, she's just Callie, she's like, I'm in my house.
I know, right?
I'm not bothering anybody. I'm writing. I'm not being political or trying to prove a point. It's not, I'm so not doing that yet. people's lives are completely unrooted, and Betty was so undone, and it just amazes me. She's like, I just want quiet and peace and no drama. I'm not going to bother anybody. I'm going to keep to myself. And yet,
not gonna happen.
I know, yet, kaboom,
Yeah, and I believe that people are different, some people are able to change over time and learn, and it takes them different detours to go and different experiences, and then there are some people who might never, or for them it's harder. So that's always interesting as a writer, to have a wide range of characters in your universe,
Absolutely. And we're getting close to the end of our time, and I do want to talk about secrets a little bit. Can you give a little summary?
Oh, yes, of course. So, completely different topic, change of scenery. In Secrets, it's about an ex-cop who thinks she has made some not so good decisions in her life lately, with quitting the job and relationships. It hasn't been going well. So very spontaneously, she decides to go on a road trip, and she's kind of also wanting peace and quiet, but when you listen to what we talked about earlier, it's not going to happen, where I come
No,
from.
it's not. And, and the funny thing is, pacing is just so very different between your two books. Like, the things are unfolding in a much more, not leisurely manner, but it goes and matches the pace of life of Autumn Leaves, and how things progress, and there's a lot of internal growth and journey, whereas Secrets is a page turner.
It's also because Autumn Leaves, not just being a romance, but also the series with the metaphors of the seasons. The way it's unfolding, it's very different. Like Autumn Leaves, you imagine a small town with the color of the leaves changing, and everything, every sensation, every image that comes with that. Whereas Secrets, it's like really a straightforward thriller. It's like there's a murder case, and there are several options for suspects, and there's a bit of romance going on also. But in the end, it's really more focused on the case and solving the case also.
Well, there's that, but you still, I feel like you have developed the emotions of the characters. They have a lot of depth, even though they're in the midst of something that's just going to continue to get a little more frightening and dangerous and life-threatening, and yet there's like a rhythm to it. There are the things where there's a lot of intense action or unexpected things going on, and then there's a slowing down just slightly so that you can kind of get what's going on in their inner life, and what relationship Marcia's having with Jesse, and also the planning of the murderer. He's making plans. It's not like, a spur of the moment, and everything is inching along, and this is not going to end well.
That's the thing that you kind of hope a feeling to evoke when you write that kind of story. So I'm glad it's
yes,
that way.
Exactly. There's a sense of urgency, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a fast-paced, breathless journey all along to still be a page turner. And I felt myself ultimately a lot more attracted to Secrets than I was to Autumn Leaves, and you have a lot of range, I feel, and that's really good as a writer, to have that versatility. I enjoyed it a lot, and unfortunately we're coming to the end of our time. I could continue chatting with you about your books, because I have to say I was truly surprised in a good way by the difference between the two, and yet they're both very appealing.
Thank you. I'm glad.
Yeah, I liked it. I really like Secrets. That really had my pulse going, and it was you did some excellent writing, and I appreciate you taking time to come on my show.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for inviting me.